You don't have to be an ardent football fan to understand the drop-off Manchester United have endured since the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson on the 8th of May 2013. Falling faster than Arnold Schwarzenegger's dumbbells on a bed of candy floss, they have not won either the Premier League or Champions League since then, often struggling to qualify for Europe's elite club tournament, whereas before Sir Alex's departure, they would appear in the latter stages almost as a matter of course. To compound this, their rivals have picked up the slack, creating a chasm at the top of the league United seem unable to breach. The natives are restless, laying the blame for the slump at the door of the club's American owners, the Glazers, citing a structural breakdown at the club under their stewardship, negating the massive £1 billion the Glazers have made available for transfers since Ferguson's departure. Despite all this, Manchester United remain arguably, depending on what you use to measure it, the world's biggest club, boosted by their dominance during the inception of the Premier League that amplified the United brand around the world. After substantial bids from Sheikh Yassim of Qatar for the entire club, the Glazers have had ample opportunity to cash out their acquisition for a healthy profit after reported offers between $4 and $6 billion, dwarfing the $790 million they paid in 2005. But they, at least in the short term, are opting against any sale, slapping down a humongous $10 billion valuation. They are, however, seriously considering an offer for 25% of the club from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the British billionaire. There is much debate about what this will mean in terms of ownership, control, and who owns what, when, where, and how. However, if we strip this back, there are some fundamental questions here. Why would the Glazers not take a healthy profit now and leave what is becoming an increasingly turbulent situation behind? Why are they so confident the value will soar? And if this is true, why dilute that opportunity by selling part of the club now? Why would Radcliffe pay $1.6 billion for 25% of the club when the stock market value for the entire club is just $3.3 billion? Finally, why would Sir Jim Ratcliffe be interested in spending $1.6 billion of his own money to claim a non-controlling stake? Please like, subscribe and comment, as that is all very helpful for the channel and really is very much appreciated. Meanwhile, I will get on with the deep dive into why the Glazers are holding on at Manchester United and whether the goings-on provide insight into an investment opportunity for those who may be looking to speculate themselves. I don't want to get too buried in the weeds here, however it is helpful to have some understanding as to the structure of ownership that Manchester United have in place and the things that are affecting its share price. The stocks within the clubs are divided into classes A and B. Crucially, the category B stocks hold 10 times the voting rights of A-class stocks, making them far more valuable in terms of strategic influence. In 2021, Avram Glazer sold a portion of Class A and B stocks. However, the B stocks that he sold were subject to a change of control clause in the Articles of Association, essentially meaning these B stocks, when sold, were stripped of the super voting rights they had formerly. Meaning, as of December 2022, the Glazers own 4.3% of the club's Class A shares and more notably somewhere around 96% of the Class B shares and nearly all of the voting rights with it. The next largest investors as of October 2023 are London-based Linsell Train, who bought 93,500 shares between September and December 2022. Their 20.85% stake is worth somewhere in the region of $220 million. There are a host of other firms with smaller stakes in the club, with smaller stakes still filtering down to individual investors. The club is listed on the New York Stock Exchange and registered in the Cayman Islands, which by its own law requires a simple majority of 66% for approval of any sale or merger. Crucially, the Glazers, despite some sales activity in the last couple of years, have been sure to maintain a 67% weighting of voting share, meaning that they do not need the consent of the other shareholders to sell the club or at what price they sell it. Something to also note here, Manchester United pays dividends to its shareholders, meaning company earnings are distributed to their shareholders annually. They are the only Premier League team to do this. All other clubs reinvest the money into the club in the hope to raise the stock price through the progress this further investment allows. Now, the initial foundations for someone looking to invest in Manchester United on the surface looks less than ideal. To help investors decide whether or not to buy, stock is categorized or graded by a data suite called A+ Investor. This takes 5 key factors into account: value, growth, momentum, earnings revisions, and quality. From this analysis, a grade ranging from A, deep value, to F, stock which is considered ultra expensive. The general theory here being that stocks that are likely to go up mostly do so because they are undervalued in the first place. Manchester United stock is currently ranked as F, meaning it is regarded as heavily overpriced, or in other words, you'd be better off putting your money on Kings Lynn signing Kylian Mbappe in the January transfer window. It's hardly a ringing endorsement for an investment, but the movements of the last year may indicate there is more to this. If we look at the club's stock price value over the last year, we can see a significant jump towards the end of 2022. This jump was manufactured by the Glazers, stating that they were going to sell the club and were looking for suitable bidders. This increased value may go some way to explain the F rating the stock currently has. This jump, incidentally, was a major beneficiary for the Chicago-based investment company Ariel Investments, selling 3 million of its shares, and Massachusetts Financial Services unloading 19% of its stake in the club, after both deciding to cash in on the price jump, breaching the $20 mark. This begs the question, if the stock jumped in anticipation of a total takeover, what would happen if a takeover actually went through? Somewhat paradoxically, we did see what happened when Sir Jim Ratcliffe's offer to buy 25% of the club was first reported to be happening. The stock tumbled. Why? It seems because the market was more buoyed by the prospect of Sheikh Jassim bids for the entire club. This seems to act as some proof that a 25% stake bought by someone with seemingly less resources and no controlling stake is not a remedy fans, investors and other interested parties believe is required to move the needle. What's more, the money that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is offering is presumably going straight back to the Glazers rather than to the club itself. What is clear is that the enthusiasm in the market is pent up for a full-scale takeover. But that is not the only thing that has had significant impact on the stock in the last 2 years. In another video I did about why the Premier League may look to buy the English Football League, I go into some detail about the American investment in English football and what the US investors will hope and expect to see as a result of their investment. One of these things is to scrap relegation, something that is the norm for US sports franchises and would instantly increase the value of the clubs involved. When the European Super League was announced in April 2021, we can see the effect it had on not just Manchester United's share price, but other European clubs for and against the proposition. As my earlier video states, US investors will likely look to reduce risk for clubs, and by proxy their investment, by softening the relegation threat, i.e. relegated clubs still remain in the Premier League franchise. This is one of the reasons the Premier League may look to purchase the English Football League. Or in an even more drastic scenario, relegation is scrapped altogether via a European Super League model, something that all football fans now know is a very real possibility. Either way, this softening or eradication of relegation is highly likely to boost share prices, particularly for a club like United. Bear in mind also, over 50% of Premier League and English Football League clubs have some sort of American investment in their structure, so the current trend is headed in this direction. So we can start to assess why there is potential for the share price to rise substantially based on the events of the last 2 years. However, there are also events taking place in the not too distant future that will come into the thinking of the Glazers and their $10 billion valuation. Many pundits and reporters have cited the 2026 World Cup in North America as a reason for expected growth in the United share price, as this will boost popularity of the game in the United States. This is true, but perhaps a more revealing question is, why would North America want to host the World Cup? There were clear reasons why Qatar and Russia wanted to be on the world stage and were willing to take a heavy hit financially to do this. Brazil and South Africa also took on huge cost implications of hosting World Cups, something we are seeing with the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics to an extent, albeit these are slightly different situations. The game is already huge in Mexico, and North America has great infrastructure to host the tournament, but there are some deeper underlying factors that make this move particularly relevant for the US right now. To say this will introduce football to a wider US audience is sort of missing the point. The game is already growing substantially in the region and has formed a solid base of soccer interest, making it particularly ripe for the acceleration a home World Cup can offer. As mentioned in previous videos, the Mexican League is already successful domestically and is a dominant sport in the country. There is also growth in Canada, but the US is where the commercial growth opportunity lies and is likely behind the heavy US investment in English clubs. North America is by far the biggest growth market for English Premier League TV rights across the world. While the UK domestic rights have remained stagnant over the last deal period, North American rights have doubled and have plenty of room for exponential growth. This growth in North American English Premier League rights, by the way, far exceeds any other market in the world. Football or soccer in the US has always been popular with both sexes at a young age, particularly in terms of participation, with an estimated 14% of all children under 18 playing the game. Traditionally, this has generally not been viewed as something that equates to kids becoming adult fans, as young adults are regularly attracted by the incumbent US sports, namely NFL, NBA, MLB and NHL. Statistically, however, this is starting to change. SportsValue.com has recently reported Gallup's finding on this. When we look at the sporting interests of the broader demographic of all adults in the US, soccer trails baseball by 2% and basketball by 4%. This already is far closer than it was, say, 10 years ago. However, it is heavily skewed by the over 55s, who, when assessed as a demographic in isolation, show just 1% as being interested in soccer. In the younger adults, not school children, where the game is gaining traction, with those aged 18 right up to 54, they are more interested in soccer than baseball, and as interested in soccer as they are basketball. Not only is this the sign that the sport is breaking through to the masses, no doubt aided by long-standing school participation and an increased Latino population, but also in the key commercial demographics for sponsors and advertisers. Key because these are the ages by which people are both influenced by advertising and have the disposable income by which to act on it. In fact, TV companies tend only measure advertising campaigns between 16 to 9 years of age, as this is the relevant demographic commercially. But this is also playing out in the American Domestic League, the MLS. While America has often been a place for big name players to spend the last days of their career, this has moved up a level in the last 5 years, particularly with names such as David Beckham now heavily involved. Lionel Messi could have spent his last playing days in any league in the world, earning more money than you or I could likely imagine. A crucial component to him choosing America, however, will have been the ownership stake he was offered to play at Inter Miami, no doubt made aware of the growth the game is going to see in the US and the unique opportunity an ownership stake brings. The MLS has signed a deal with Apple TV to broadcast the games, playing a minimum of $250 million a season, and is a brand that appeals directly to the younger demographics mentioned in the US, where traction is high. To put that in perspective, the league previously received about $100 million a year for its TV rights. All of this points towards a period of substantial and prolonged growth for the domestic league in the US, as referenced by SportsValue.com. According to Sports Value's analysis, with the MLS revenues growth, the league will pass the Brazilian Serie A and will become the largest football league outside of Europe, and with great chances to surpass Ligue 1 and Italian Serie A. Bear in mind here as well, the ceiling for growth in the US is also extremely high, based on population and disposable income. almost akin to having one league in Europe. The potential audience growth and commercial potential here is massive, and this audience is expected to buy into the English league as much as anywhere else. So if we look at this in the cold light of day and from a purely commercial perspective, you could make the case that the Glazers got the jump on other investors and recognized the potential for growth, particularly in the US way back in 2005. With seemingly endless amounts of US investors now jumping on the opportunity and across multiple levels of the English game and footballing brands, from Wrexham to Birmingham to Liverpool, Burnley and Chelsea, why wouldn't they feel entitled to reap the rewards of their shrewd bet? And this also should provide some confidence for anyone looking to buy shares themselves, that despite this current F rating, the weight of evidence suggests the value of top clubs, with Manchester United still at the top of this list, due to their commercial power, will become more valuable and commercially more viable across the world, particularly in the largest growth market, the US. So this provides some context on why the Glazers will hold on, and I think makes some sense, but three questions still remain. Why would Sir Jim Ratcliffe buy a non-controlling stake in the club? Why would Ratcliffe pay $1.6 billion for 25% when the stock market value for the entire club is $3.3 billion? And why would the Glazers dilute the opportunity they have by selling part of the club? When we delve into the reports on this, it seems to provide more evidence that the club is set for a vastly increased share price in the years ahead. Firstly, the Glazers and Ratcliffe have a very good relationship, which always helps in these matters, and Ratcliffe did reportedly offer to buy the entirety of the Glazers' owned Class B shares initially, something the Glazers, for reasons we can now see, turned down. Instead, Ratcliffe is prepared to pay $1.6 billion for 25% of the club, a club which recently had a stock market value of $3.3 billion, a huge markup that incidentally is even a substantial increase on what the consortium of Clearlake Capital paid for Chelsea in the summer of 2022. It seems that this is a compromise between the Glazers, who essentially need the money, for want of a better description, or at least are keen to rake in some capital, and Ratcliffe, who believes that while he may be seen to be overpaying now, is convinced this is the kind of price that will not be available later due to the surge he expects to see in the share price in the coming years. If the Glazers truly believe the club is worth $10 billion, then a 25% stake should be somewhere around the $2.5 billion mark. It seems that Ratcliffe is inclined to believe the Glazer valuation rather than the current market valuation and is happy to get a deal. This should tell us something about the commercial viability of the club in the next few years, and I would wager adds more weight to the argument that the value is set to soar due to some of the reasons mentioned here. While there'll be speculation as to Ratcliffe's motives, responsibility and control moving forward at the club, it is clear what US investment firms expect to see in the years ahead as clubs like Manchester United become an even stronger entertainment brand on the global stage than they already are. Thank you everyone for watching this video and for getting to the end. If you can like and subscribe or comment, all that is really useful for the channel. Helps with the algorithm and all those sorts of things. And thank you very much again, and I'll see you on the next one.